welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to catch up with Kestner. Today we have Mrs. Decker throwing it back to my high school counselor as we go through the start of this new series. Mrs. Decker, thank you so much for taking the time.
I feel really honored that you invited me to be here. You were a really special student in my career path and meant a lot to me while you were at school. And so it's been great cyber stalking you for the last 7 years. And it's great to actually talk to you in virtual person. So this is great. Thanks for having me.
To start things off, Mrs. Decker, for the people that don't know who you are, really quickly, who are you? What are you up to? We'll start off with that.
Yeah, so my name is Heather Decker. I'm the coordinator of counseling at LPS Hayward, or Leadership Public Schools in Hayward, California. We're a small charter high school with a focus on helping first-generation students get to college. And Kestner was in my caseload when he was in high school. And his senior year, he was the school president, and so we needed to make sure that he had enough time to do all of his student gov stuff. So he was my TA his senior year as well, which was super fun. So that's been great. Currently right now, so Kestner, when we last spoke, when you were in high school, I was, just starting my counseling career at Hayward. I was actually in the middle of grad school when you graduated. So I was working full time. I was doing grad school full time at night, doing an internship. I think the year after you graduated, I did my internship. And so it was a lot all at once, but since then, obviously I've graduated. I've done that for a while, and now I'm the head of the department since last year. So that's great. It's been a big growth to now be like the person that has to come up with the vision. Right? Like coach people and help them and who are new in their career, or we have interns and stuff, like supervising people who want to do my job as a job. Trying to think of the level of responsibility of oh man, I have to be an expert at this and help somebody else because they're going to go help more kids, and that matters. There's been a lot of that. That's kind of where I am. We have a strong counseling team now, and I'm really excited to be a part of that. But yeah, it's grown a lot since it was just Dr. Aguilar and myself at the counseling center. Yeah, we've come a long way.
Man, I'm just starting to reminisce about, just the days of high school, and, putting it out there, having this conversation with you as an older adult now, it's exciting and weird at the same time, because there's so many things that you're talking about in the past tense, but it feels like the present tense for me, just, starting off my career as a teacher. But it's I'm just so excited for the conversation today. But, that's good to hear. A lot of great things that we're going to get into. So, I'm very curious, because a lot of the things that I have in mind today, it's, conversations that I never really had with you, on a deeper level, just because, I was a kid back then. But thinking about your younger experiences as a counselor and just going into that field, what about your experiences when you were younger motivates you to be the best counselor that you can be for your students now?
Yeah. So I always go back to this story of my time in high school. So I actively have very vivid memories of what that experience was like for me. So there was stuff that happens in your life when you're in high school, teenagers, things with your family happen. And it was a pretty challenging time for me, especially in the beginning of high school. And, my school counselor at my school was helpful, right? But wasn't really the person I needed in that moment. And when times got really tough, I realized to myself, I want to be the person that I needed in that moment. Right? That process was really hard, and I wanted to have someone to talk to, someone to go to, someone who could help guide me through the choices that I wanted for life. And so, after I graduated high school, I studied psychology at San Jose State, and was doing that. And year 2 into my program, I went back and talked to my counselor at my high school. I was like, yeah, I'm going to school. I want to be a school counselor just like you. He's like, don't do that. No jobs. You're not going to want to do that. And my heart sank.
Wow.
I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. I'd already had this vision that I was going to go and go to grad school right away after I graduated. And I don't know if that's the right thing to do now. And, what am I going to do? So when I graduated, I didn't go to grad school. I was like, okay, I need to go try this career out and figure out if I actually like it. So I started off working at a company called Seneca, which is a school for students who are struggling with like emotional disabilities that can't
Yeah.
be in a traditional like school setting right
Right.
away. I did that for about a year and a half, and that was really hard on my heart to see students that were struggling so hard. And while they were providing a lot of like behavioral help,
Right.
the academic help was just not there. And I worried about these kids' futures, like learning and
Right.
like when they transitioned out to traditional high schools, like what that experience was going to be like. Were they going to be able to keep up? What were their like future goals going to
Yeah.
be? So that was really hard. And it was funny, like all that time, I still had this thing in the back of my head. I'm like, maybe I'll go be a school counselor. Like, I think I still want to do that,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
Mm.
And then this, something happened at Seneca, and I was like, you know what, I really think I need to transition. And I saw the Craigslist posting for this academic intervention position at a new charter school that I'd never heard of in a city that I
Uh,
hadn't really spent time in. Like I grew up
uh-huh.
in Fremont, so I hadn't been in
Okay.
Hayward.
Yeah.
And they were like, we need somebody to create what academic intervention is at our school. So me being this little 22, 23-year-old, and I was like, yeah, I have this idea. It's going to be peer tutoring and I'm going to offer one-on-one support and do all these things. In
Right.
the back of my brain, I was like, I wonder if this will eventually turn into school counseling. Like, I wonder if this
Mm.
position will become that. They
Right.
didn't have a school counselor at that point. We were only in year 2 of
Mm.
LPS. So I did that for about 4 years, and they hired another school counselor, and I like watched
Right.
them do the work, and I watched them go through this piece, and I kept like, can I help you just a little bit? Like, can I learn a little bit about what you're doing? And at one point, about 2010, 2011, I finally turned to our then principal, Miss Klafke, who you knew,
Right.
and I was like,
Oh man.
I kind of need, I'm going to go back to grad school. Like, I'm just
Mm.
like, I have to do it. Like,
Right.
I can see this every day. I'm working with the school counselor we have now. I know this is what I want. I've known that since high school. I've known that since, 16, 17 years old.
Mm.
But now it's been 7 years since I graduated, and I'm a full adult. Like,
Yeah.
married, I have a real job. Like, is this really what I want to do? Like, blow up my entire life?
Mm.
But sometimes you kind of have to do that. Like, if you know, like in your gut, like this is a thing that you want to do,
Mm.
the risk is worth it.
It's
And
good.
so at that point in time, I just told her, and she's like, okay, the next year I'm hiring you as a counselor. Like, you kind of like bring it into existence by like just committing to this goal. And I keep thinking back about like, you worry that it's going to be too hard, so you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
You get scared and you talk yourself out of it. And I
Definitely.
talked myself out of it for 7 years. Right. And that was, I needed to go through the work. I needed to learn. But in the
Yeah.
end, it was like, you feel it in your gut what you're supposed to
Mm.
do. For most people, sometimes it takes a really long time. Sometimes the
Right.
journey is hard.
Yeah.
But I knew that in that moment, and I've never regretted the decision since. Yeah, grad school was hard. Going to grad school while you're
Yep.
working full time, while you're
Yep.
interning, while you're trying to take care of your husband who's also in, in school, and
True.
all these things. Like, it's hard, but in the end, like, I don't regret a minute of it.
Mm. Good.
You follow your passions, you're doing things you actually want to do, like, it feels worth it. And so, like, thinking back to the like 14, 15-year-old Heather, she knew then what she wanted.
Dang.
It
Yeah.
feels different because you had to go through the journey to get there.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Like, you needed to like prove it to yourself that you could do it, and that was the right thing. So while it took me a little bit longer to get there, like, the journey was worth it.
Dang. That's so true. I loved how you said that, if you really want something, you have to go get it. Because, down the line, when I think back to your story of, 14, 15 years old, you had an idea, you had this image of what you wanted to be, but you were too scared, or you were too worried, or you're, insecure of whatever was to come, whether that was too hard, it was too difficult, take too much time, but it took you 7 years to really buckle down and just come to the fact saying, this was always a dream of mine. This was always something that I saw myself positioned to do well in, or something that's on my heart. But something was always holding me back, and it took you a while for you to be comfortable with that idea, for you to accept that, no, I'm just going to try it. I'm just going to put myself on a limb and say, if this was something on my heart to begin with, it's worth giving it a shot. And I think that's something that a lot of people can relate with, even myself of, you know, even when it comes to teaching, I say this quite often. I never imagined myself becoming a teacher. I really like teaching in college, but I never thought that I was, going to be fit enough to be a classroom teacher in the classroom, right? I was a dance teacher beforehand, but science, like that's a whole different field for me. Even though I love science, even though I studied science, it's as you know, it's a lot different being a classroom teacher in that sense. So it took me a while to wrestle with that and to just come into terms. But I'm really finding myself in this space. And when I hear that in a counselor that I really thought had everything together, when you were my counselor back in the day, I thought you had everything down. You were like the go-to person for college apps, for college advice, and just high school in general. And so to hear that you are still in that space of uncertainty, or you're in that space of figuring out your role or your position, and the degree of your impact, it never occurred to me that those thoughts were going to your head. And it's not supposed to, right? I feel like a lot of times, as you know teaching professionals or just staff members at a school, you have to feel very put together. You have to feel like you know what you're doing all the time, 100% of the time, or else that might bleed into your students, right? And you want to be that person that, like you said, meets your students where you're at, or meets your caseload of where they're at. And that's such an important idea of meeting your students of where they need you, showing them, I'm not just a position, but I'm a person too, and understanding you as a young adolescent of where you're entering into high school, or where you're entering into your lives. It's a very pivotal moment, a very monumental moment of what is your next step. And I'm here to help you, guide through that process. I'm here to help counsel you through that process, and to make the process or journey a lot easier. And I feel like that's definitely a role that you played for me, definitely making high school a lot easier for me. But not a lot of counselors are like that. And like you said, they're not fully what you need at that time. And I think that's the experience that you were talking about when you were in high school. And so I just appreciate that you were able to take your own experience of, I wish I had a better counselor in some senses, and I'm going to be a counselor that does that for other students, meets them where they're at,
Yeah.
is there when they need me to be, not just emotionally, but, academically, and all these different components. And, you did that for me. I know that you did that for a lot of other students in my class, and just, I'm sure you've done it definitely throughout the years. And it's just great to see that full circle of, you take an experience of something that you lacked in high school, and for you to turn into that person, like when you actually reach your career, or when you go down the line. So it's pretty cool to hear. It's definitely cool to
Yeah.
hear.
And it's always still a growth journey. Like it's interesting.
Yeah.
Like you're in what, like year 3 going into teaching? What
Yes.
year? Are you?
Yes.
Year
Year
3
three.
or 3.
Yeah.
When I was your senior counselor, that was year 2 of me doing the job. It was year
Dang.
2, right? And you can say this thing like you want to put this face on, like you have it all
Mhm.
together.
Right.
And by year, I've been at LPS for 13 years now. I just finished year 13. You realize that like people don't people don't always expect that of you all the time.
Yeah.
Like that's okay to be real. Be like, you know what? Today I'm struggling,
Yeah.
but that's okay. And we're gonna do this together. I don't know the answer to that, but we're gonna figure it out together, and that's okay. Like that
Yeah.
gives permission for students, for parents, for staff, for whoever's involved to like we're human. Like sometimes we don't know everything all the time, and
Right.
that's fine. Like
Yeah.
sometimes we're having a rough day, and that's okay too, right?
Mhm.
Like especially with everything that's happening in the world right now, you kind of like we
Yeah.
keep talking in our school like you have to practice grace. Like you have to
Good.
practice grace with like yourself. And so
Right.
like as you go through this, and if you feel like you have to have it all together all the time, nobody has it together all the time.
I know.
I'm sure there was days when you were there that I had to close my office and cry in the corner. That like that's real, and I'm
Oh my
sure you're
God.
having some of those now. Like
Yeah.
it happens. Like, but that's part of the process. And as you go through it longer, you realize like it's okay.
Right.
Like, that doesn't make you any less professional. That doesn't make you any less, knowledgeable or, capable of doing the job. That just makes you human. And
Yeah.
as soon as you can kind of accept that, it makes it a whole lot easier. There's a whole lot less pressure to
It's
kind of
good.
be a certain way. And kids don't feel like they have to be a certain way with you either,
Yeah.
right? They can be real. They want
Right.
genuineness. They want
Yeah.
realness because they can sniff it out real fast if you're not.
Yep.
the kids know if you're
Yeah.
putting a face on or if you're
Yeah.
like trying to be super like I'm professional, I know what I'm
Right.
doing. Like they sniff that out and they're like, no, I'm gonna go to the next person. Like it's fine.
Mhm.
They'd rather you just be real.
It's
And
true.
I try as much as I can, right? Like
Right. And I'm just thinking about how parallel this works for pretty much like all occupations or all jobs, the idea of wanting to be your best at all times. And we should be, right? I'm not saying that it's, you have to put up this front or you have to be this person because your job requires it. But at the same time, too, it's especially during a time now where this idea, I love the idea how you said grace. And, we're coming into spaces that we're not completely familiar with. We're coming into a role. Maybe some of us got a promotion. Maybe some of us are working a different job. But whatever space that we're in right now, it's this idea that we're trying to be our best and we're going to be our best, but we just need time. And
yeah.
we're going to have slip ups. We're going to have moments where we're not on our A game, but that's okay because it's always reassuring to knowing that the person next to you probably doesn't have it together either, in some degree, right? Maybe they look a certain way or they're acting a certain way, and that's okay. Like we can try to do that too, but it's this idea of coming to our knees and saying there are moments where I cannot do this, or
Mhm.
I feel like I'm alone, or I feel like there's something that's holding me back, and bringing that into light, being open with that idea, and just being honest, I think is a huge part too, especially now, this honesty of where we're at, where our feelings are at in our jobs, and just with the way the world is shifting right now. And so it's good to hear that I'm in a place, and a lot of us are in a place where our teachers were once in,
Yeah.
and to see where they are now, of just the growth that our teachers have had, our staff has had, and how much better they're doing now. We can look forward to that as a class, and just as people in general, looking forward into ourselves and knowing that there's a lot better things for us ahead.
Yeah. I mean, it's there. Just be patient with yourself,
Right.
right? Just keep trying to do the next right thing all the
Yeah.
time and just kind of keep going. You'll be okay. And don't be afraid to ask for help. I
Yes.
think that's the biggest thing. Don't be afraid to ask for help. If you're struggling, like that's okay to struggle. It's okay not to ask for help. Like that's the kind of piece you got to remember. Like
Yeah.
call somebody, call your mom,
Mhm.
call your best friend, call your
Right.
teacher that you had 5 years ago.
Hmm.
Someone will answer the phone, but like you don't have to struggle through it alone.
That's
And
true.
that was the big thing, like calling back to the experience in high school is like, I shouldn't have had to go through that alone.
Mm.
And so it's like, I don't want anybody else to feel like they have to go through it alone either. Right.
I
So
see.
Kestner, if you need it, call me.
I will. I will. And that's why I love this right here. Thinking about, where you're at currently, just, how much I love how you're attesting to the growth that you've had as a school counselor, and just being able to take in this position now where you're leading other people in their journeys of finding their counseling career. But speak about what were your most joyful experiences and your most troubling experiences as a high school counselor.
Oh my gosh. I mean, just like when you came up to that, like my biggest pieces actually were being as an advisor. Like
Mm,
those parts was like a whole different thing. So like at our
yeah,
school, each staff gets an advisory of students that they're like
right.
have all 4 years. It's kind of like their little family, and you're like their
Yes.
parent. And these are all the
Yeah.
little siblings, right? So my first advisory I had for all 4 years, and they graduated the year before you, so in
Yep.
2012. And I think back to the very first student in my advisory that ever got accepted to college. And she, like, I love the story, but she went to Humboldt for they
Mm,
had this like admissions day where you could get on the spot accepted at Humboldt. And like I had knew in advance, like that was the school she really wanted to go to. And she was making this big trip, like Humboldt's like, 6, 7 hours away. Her family
yeah.
drove to this whole event. And I'm like wandering through Target one day and I get this text message from her and she sends me a picture of their certificate that says like you were accepted. And I'm like bawling, crying in the middle of Target and
Dang.
people like don't know what's happening.
Mhm.
I'm like texting her, I'm like calling her, like, I'm so excited for you. Like, this is amazing. And I'm like, no shame situation because it was
Yeah.
like, you know, that was 2011, 2012. That's when I was applying for grad school. So like like my
Dang.
first advisory and me applied to college at the same time. Like we wrote our essays together. We both got acceptance t-shirts together. I jokingly put my picture up on the college acceptance board at school. Like we went through that process together. So to
Yeah.
have her get that acceptance like was huge because I'd been
Mm,
with her since, she was 13 years old.
Yeah.
And so those moments like fill me up. Like I remember my second advisory, one student had said from the beginning he wanted to go to Irvine, and like we calendared the day that Irvine was supposed to send the messages out. He's in class now. Kestner, you know you're not supposed to text while you're
Yeah.
in school.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not supposed to text while
Anyone
you're in
else
school.
listening, don't text in class.
Don't text at school. But he texted me from class. I got an Irvine. Like, and when I'm like trying to figure out what classroom he is in, I'm running over there like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to see you. And I was so excited for him because like that's what, and he went there and he graduated from there and now he's doing like amazing things.
Yeah.
Right. So it's those moments like the hard work leads to that.
Right.
Chances where you get to like see these dreams, these goals come to fruition. Like so much of my job, I think of it that way of like, my job is to help you figure out whatever your goal is, like to have the conversations, whatever these things, like whatever you want to work for. And then, you know, give you the pathway to do that, right? Like give you all the information, the guidance to point you in the right direction.
Yeah.
But my job is to help you make your dreams come true.
Right.
Like, how amazing is that?
It's true.
How amazing is that?
That's true.
And I think about that, like I got another student in my second advisory. I don't remember if it was like his junior year or something. I was just, you know, having the conversation of like, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? He's like, oh, I think I want to do something with computers. I was like, no, but let me ask you the real question. Like, if you could think of the coolest job in the entire world, like what's the cool, like, I don't care if it sounds completely unrealistic. What is the thing you actually want to do? He's like, I want to build an Iron Man suit. And I was like, okay, tell me more about this. Like, let me live in this dream that you have. I'm like, what part of the Iron Man suit? Do you want to like do the like the armature? Do you want to do the programming? Do you want to be the superhero that flies in it? He's like, I want to make the Jarvis.
Dang.
I want to make the computer like system that talks in there. I was like, all right, we're in it. Like, let's figure out the school. It's going to get you to programming. Let's do this thing.
Wow.
I graduated from San Jose State last winter. And every time I talked to him, I was like, how's your Jarvis going? He's like, this is what I'm doing in class right now that's leading towards Jarvis. Like, this is what I'm doing right now that's going to help me get to like, it's about me just believing in whatever goal they have and pushing them to think bigger, right? Good. Like helping them like dive into what's in their heart. Yeah. Because it could have been easy for him to say that to someone, like it probably was hard for him to say that. And if he said it to somebody else, they might've been like, that's ridiculous. Like, you're not gonna build an Iron Man suit. Iron Man doesn't exist. I was like, but my job is to believe in your dreams and help support you to get to whatever that version is. Yeah. So when Kestner said he was going to go to Davis and he was going to study medicine, I was like, yeah, Kestner is. And when Kestner decided he was going to be a bio teacher, I was like, yeah, I kind of thought he was going to end up being a science teacher. He'd be a really good teacher.
Oh, man.
So that's okay. But if whatever pathway you took, my job is to be like, cool, let's get you to whatever that thing is. You know, I'm still sad that we didn't get to hire you yet. But when you come back to the Bay Area someday, we're here.
Oh, man.
I think the hardest parts, God, there's a lot that breaks my heart. But I think it's one of those situations that's like, this job is complicated.
Yeah.
Right? Being a counselor, you're there for the good and you're there for the bad.
Right.
Right. And part of the, like people sometimes make the jokes that I don't appreciate, but they worry about like, oh, if you're a counselor, it's like garbage in all day and then garbage out all day. Like all you hear is the negative all day. And so then in your life, you always just see the negative. And I was like, I don't actually think my role is like that most of the time. Most of the people aren't just like negative. It's like they're struggling with something because they want to work towards something better. Like they can see a vision of what better looks like. And right now it's not that. And they're struggling with that dissonance, right?
Wow.
Like, so even when the days are bad, when the kids are like, you know, this thing happened to me, or you know, this person is being this way, or I don't know if I'm going to get to my goals. Like the struggle is with, because they have a vision of something better and I want to help them get to that piece. But we get there, right? Like the journey looks different. And my whole philosophy that we talk about a lot is like, everybody's path is different.
Yeah. Yeah.
It might take you longer, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to get there. And it's not going to be not going to be any less sweet when you arrive. Right. So it's okay if there's a struggle. It's okay if you had to have your origin story that leads you to becoming this better version of yourself. Like, that's okay too. I think we make great relationships with students here. And, you know, the hardest things when we lose a student, we've lost a student over the years. And that's really a struggle.
That's true.
Really a struggle because these people are all part of our family.
Mm,
right? But I feel fortunate enough to have had these people in my lives. Like,
right.
I try to calculate recently how many students have come through LPS because I've worked with every single graduating class that's ever been at the
I
school.
know.
So it's like, my math is terrible. So let's just say 1,500 students or something that have
Yeah.
come to
Oh my
campus.
gosh.
That's 1,500 lives that we've gotten to touch in some way, shape, or form.
Wow.
The
Yeah.
good and the bad, they all come together. And it's just a really special career to be a part of. It's a really special school to be a part of,
Yeah.
community to be a part of. And so I just feel fortunate to have been in a position to be at this school that, gave me a chance when I was 23, let me build something from scratch, which,
Yeah.
at that point in time, they were still building the school from scratch. So
Right.
let this person come in. And then when I decided that I wanted something more, they backed me up,
Mm, that's
right?
good.
They supported me. They're like, okay,
Right.
we'll do that. And so I just kind of keep that in the back of my mind with my
Right.
students of like, I want to give you the opportunities that you can to grow because this place is giving me the opportunities to grow.
Right. So many good things from that, and that I love thinking about, just, talk wrapping this idea of, my job is the joy. Like when I hear you talk about your experiences as an advisor, early advisor, as a counselor, I just love the spirit in which you talk of, the role that I have, the position that I have, and the work that I do is the joy, because I go through so many walks of lives with my students, and these people that are not too sure of their direction, they're not too sure of their path of how to get to point A to point B, but my job is to make point A to point B a little bit more realistic, or just feel a little bit more attainable. And there is that beauty of being a part of that when it's, a life that you've never been a part of. You get a student, you don't know who they are, you don't know, what journey or what experiences they've gone through, but I want to hear your life. I want to hear what you have in mind of where you want to be, and my job is to help you feel like you can get there. And that's just such a beautiful place to be in, as not just a counselor, as a teacher, as an advisor, but just as a person, to be able to say 15 years, 10 years down the line, 8 years down the line, saying I played a role in that person getting to where they wanted to be. And that's not coming from a place of boastful, or a place of ego, but just being a place of humility, saying I was a part of that journey. I was a part of the decisions that you made to help you, be in a place where you're so much more happier, and to be able to contribute to your happiness, be able to be in the spots of your lowest point also. That's just like I was there with you, and I feel for you. And this idea of being so humble of, we don't know where we want to be. We don't know what life is 10 years down the line, but whatever passion you have, whatever interest, whatever extravagant idea that you want to build upon yourself, like let's start there. Let's hold on to this idea of Jarvis. Let's hold on to this idea of medicine, or whatever it is, and we'll find a way to make it work. It may not fully flesh out, manifest into the exact idea that you have, but that's okay, right? Because we're seeing what complements who you are. We're seeing what complements your personality, your interests, and we're gonna find something that really thrives in that, and nurtures this idea of who you are. It's not necessarily the image of what you expect, but what complements who you are. And I think I loved how you gave the example of, when I was in high school, I really wanted to become a doctor. And, this idea of caring for people through medicine, caring through people through healthcare, that was the fundamental idea of why I wanted to become a doctor. And just thinking about it now, like, I'm not a doctor, but I'm essentially doing the same work of caring for the people that come into my life. And that's the
Yeah.
beautiful part, right? I never thought I'd be a teacher. I thought I'd be a doctor when I was going through college. And, life takes you in different directions, and I have no regret with the path that I've taken. And that's where I can profoundly say it's because I had a person in high school that believed that I can get to where I wanted to be. And that was you, like just having so much confidence and saying, if you want to become a doctor, let's take that. Let's do
Yeah.
let's do the job, and let's put in the work, and let's make the connections, and work through the personal statements, and find what you're passionate about, or find what you're interested in talking about, and let's lean into that. Because it's funny how you said that, you thought I was going to be a teacher one day, and being in high school, I never thought I'd be a teacher. and just for you to say that now, it's, it's a laughing moment essentially. And but when I think back to it, I did have the characteristics of, when I think of my teachers, when I think of the best staff members that have grown a part to my journey in middle school and high school and college, when I think about them, there are a lot of qualities that I really appreciate and that I try to emulate when I'm a teacher now. And so when I think of that, it's some of it comes a little bit more naturally. And I do appreciate those moments of, maybe teaching is a little bit more my style, or maybe counseling is a little bit more of what I'm interested in. It's just like this environment, this conversations that I have with my students and other professionals and other academics. It's a space that I really like being in. And would I have gotten that if I was a doctor? Maybe not, but you know, I like where I'm at, and I enjoy what the impact of the scope of what I'm doing. And that's something that I think about when I reflect on my high school journey, and when I talk to my students of, I have this idea, like 10 years down the line, it may not necessarily feel out the way that you think it's going to be, what you envision it to be, but at the same time too, like what part of yourself are you preserving,
Yeah.
right? Because you don't want your core fundamental awesome personality to change over time. Like that happens, and we go through different experiences, we go through different journeys that affect us who we are. But what essentially about yourself are you keeping with yourself as you go through high school, as you go through college, as you go through finding yourself as an adult? And it's preserving those core fundamentals of your values, your morals, that make you the best person that you can be, and finding those different steps of to level up. So I know that I've grown a lot since high school, but essentially there are a lot of things that really haven't really left, and it's been just a huge part of who I am. And so for you to lean into that as a counselor, and for you to identify those things at an early age for us students when we were younger, and for us to be able to, at least for myself, be able to acknowledge that you believed in that part of me.
Hmm.
And that's something I really appreciate, and something that I'll never forget. You were there when I was struggling through personal statement, but you reminded me of this idea of, whatever that was. I'm trying to think back
I
to it.
remember your personal statements.
Oh man,
I
we don't need to
remember
talk about
we
that,
wrote.
but but it's just this idea of, preserving who you are, and getting colleges, getting different schools, getting whoever's looking at your application to realize this is who you are, and this is a person, this is a student worth investing in. This is a person worth accepting into your college, whether it's, who they are, whether it's their academic potential, whether all these different things. They have so much to offer. And I think that's one thing I really appreciated about leadership, or LPS in general, was believing in the core fundamental of our students. And it's not necessarily the background that they, or the experiences that they come from, the homes that they go through, or the socioeconomic conversation. It's who are they as people. And I
Yeah.
think there's so many students that came out of that school that can attest to that, can appreciate that belief of just letting us be who we are, in the selves that we come from different places and have different stories, but we're all reaching in the same thing of, we want to get somewhere, and we want to branch out. We want to move from this place of the small bubble that we had in Hayward of, what we thought was possible, but there's so much more out there. And I think of that when I have my students here in Hawaii. There's this bubble that we live in, there's this island that we live in, but at the same time there's so much more out there. And
Yeah.
so just to see the parallel in my upbringing, in California, and then in my students, it's very awesome to see the full circle, or the full nature of that. So you know yeah, it's just crazy to think back on that.
Yeah. I think I think one thing that's changed a lot, I think, since working with you, and I like hope that more counselors or schools think about it, is like changing the conversation about how we ask kids what they want to do.
It's
Because
good.
we ask students a lot, like, what job do you want?
Yeah.
Right? At like 16 years old, like, do you know every job that exists? No.
Nope.
I don't even know every job that exists. Like, and that's also very limiting in thinking that you only get one.
Right, that's good, that's true.
Right? Like your path is only going to go in a straight line. It's going to lead to
Yeah.
Kestner. You will be a doctor,
Yeah.
right? And then what? Right? Like
Right.
careers nowadays just aren't that way.
Mhm.
College degrees aren't even that way.
It's
And
true.
so I try to start saying changing the conversation of like, what's a problem you want to solve in the world?
It's good. Yep.
And then what strengths do you have that can address that in a variety of different ways?
Yeah.
So for you, like you said yourself, like you want to help make people's health better.
Yeah.
You want to help people by improving health. And being
Yeah.
a biology teacher teaches kids and students and families about how their body works so
Mm,
they can better take care of it,
it's good. Yeah.
right? For the rest of their life.
It's good.
And some of those people may be inspired to then go be a teacher or a doctor or a bioengineer or
Yeah.
something else down the road. So like you get to potentially send off 20, 30 kids out into the world that
Mm-hmm.
could turn into 20, 30 scientists, doctors, researchers, whatever. So
Right.
like you could be one doctor or you could create 30 every year.
Crazy.
Who knows, right? But
Yeah.
it's about like, what's the problem that you want to solve in the world?
Yeah.
Or changing the question just a little bit for some students, it's like, what's the question that keeps you up at night?
Mm,
What's the thing that you can't stop thinking about, even if you wanted to? What's the
yeah.
thing you do, even if you didn't get paid?
Mm,
Like
good.
you would dance even if you didn't get paid, because you don't get paid most time when you dance, but that's like to your core, and that's
Yeah.
important. So follow those things that you would do no matter what.
That's
A lot of
true.
times kids stop at the like, well, that doesn't make any money, right? I was like, anything can make money if you really want to try. We
Mm.
could find a million ways. Like Kestner, you could be a YouTube star right now with your dance videos and teach us all how to have really cool moves to Bruno Mars songs. But you're choosing this other path, and that's okay,
Mm,
right? You can
yeah.
turn any passion into a career if you want to. So I'd rather you follow whatever that thing is that fills your heart,
Mm,
rather than just trying to like chase money. Like I need to be a doctor or a lawyer or something that like makes a gajillion dollars, right? Like
yeah. Yeah.
those paths are really hard, and if you don't love it, it's going to be even
True.
harder.
It's true.
It's going to be so much harder if you don't love that thing. But if you love it, cool, do it. Like you'll spend the waitless nights studying for that thing and going to the
Yeah.
job and those pieces. But like you said, like keeping down to your core, it's about like, what do you want to make better in the world?
Right.
And you can attack that tons of different ways now, and then 5 years from now, and then 10
True.
years from now, like it changes a little bit. But you like health was important to you
Yeah.
because of your journey that you got to today. And
Yeah.
so whatever that thing is important to you, like follow that,
Mm,
because that will make it easier. If you're doing work that you love, it'll get easier.
that's
I
true.
think asking that question, like, what job do you want? Like, that's just so limiting. And
Yeah.
our lives change so much over time. Like, I started off doing something, different and changed twice before I got here.
Yeah.
And who knows what will be 10 years from now? I don't know.
Right.
But I know I want to help students. And
Yeah.
I know I want to be that person that people need, especially in adolescence, because adolescence is hard. But
It's
like,
true.
it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to grow and change over time. But like you said, like, keep following what's your core,
Yeah.
thing that you want to do and make
Yeah.
better, and constantly trying to be working towards that thing
Mm,
in one way or another in your life.
yeah. And that's good because not even outside of the scope of education too, for all people that are, working their jobs, whether that's 9 to 5 or working on their own time, it's, is your job complementing who you are? And, for some of us it is, some of us it's not. And, that's not to say that you're in the wrong space, but, find that space where you can be who you are. And
Yeah.
for those people out there that are switching careers, finding out what their true calling is or whatever makes them happy to wake up in the morning, stay true to who you are. And I think that's a huge essential part of how we find not just happiness, but also how we provide, for our health and our mental health and our, just our longevity as people. It's complementing your values, complementing who you are as a person, and finding some way to do that every day. Maybe it's a job that makes money, maybe it's just a side passion project,
Yeah.
or whatever it is. But I think it's a good thing that everyone needs to hear. Is just find something that complements who you are, stick to that, don't let it go. If it makes money, it makes money. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Just find a way to have it a part of your life. And I think that's something I've always appreciated. So
Yeah.
so thinking about this whole scope of, almost over a decade of just working at leadership public schools, and, I talk a little bit about, comparing your first year at LPS with this past year.
Yeah.
What changes stick out the most to you outside of, building changes and different staff? What else sticks out?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely that, right? There's like
Yeah,
the physical thing.
yeah,
We've grown in like size right
yeah,
now. When we left, we
definitely.
were at like 500 students, and now we're at like 600, over 600
Yeah,
students. Just grown a little bit.
yeah.
But I also just think like we're not making it up as we're not building the plane as it's flying
Mm,
anymore,
that's good.
right? Like we
Yeah,
know how to, like we created a school and it's going, right? Like we just finished year 15. Um,
dang.
now we can like slow down and be reflective. Like it's not like
That's
putting out
good.
fires. We sit there and go, well, how do we want to do this? Right?
Yeah,
What's in the best interest of our students? We have more capacity now. How do we want to like
good.
not just like what do we want to do, but like how do we want to do it?
I like that.
Right. And so like when this whole pandemic came into situation,
Mm,
like I don't know how it was for your school, but at
right.
our school, we found on a Thursday that we were closing on Monday and we didn't know when we were going to come back and we had to
Yeah,
transition to distance learning. So we literally had from Thursday till Monday morning to build a new school,
that's true.
build an entire school. So the admin team, like myself, our principal, our APs, like all these people, basically for 4 days straight, Thursday through very late nights on Saturdays, Sundays coming together, like you had to build an entire school from scratch again.
Yeah.
And you had to kind of know what your core values were. What is it that
Hmm.
like had to happen? And we
Right.
spent a lot of time just really thinking about like connection. We need our kids to be connected and we need to make sure that they're successful,
It's
that
true.
things are simple. Not like simple, like not rigorous, but like I know where to go quickly to get
Yeah.
help, to find my class, to get my assignment, to whatever it was. We wanted simplicity and success.
It's good.
And if that's what we needed to be in distance learning for that quarter, like we weren't going to worry about some of the bigger things like
Mm.
what kids are wearing. Obviously on a Zoom call, like I'm not going to dress code you. Like it doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense, right? Like, we weren't going to try to get everybody on the call at the same time because some people were just dealing with basics.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
dealing with, like, do I have electricity? Do I have food? Like
Yeah.
we were dealing with that as a school. And I think
Mm.
it really kind of got us to go back down to like, what is our core? Who are we
Mm.
at? Like,
Yeah.
we're here to serve these students
Right.
and we needed to figure out what they needed. And so in
Yeah.
that moment, it was very much like, okay, well, some of our kids need electricity. Some of our kids need food. Some of our kids need someone to talk to. Some of our kids need like a safe space because maybe home isn't always safe all the time.
That's true.
Like some people, some people are at a very different place. Like they actually needed algebra tutoring. I'm like, okay, well, we'll offer that too.
Yeah.
But we had the capacity as a school at that point in time to slow down enough to really ask ourselves, like, what do our kids need? And we need to
Mm.
become that right now. And that was a very powerful place to be in.
Yeah.
And I'm a pretty like I'm a person that kind of like tells it as it is, and sometimes
Yeah.
I'm stuck in my ways. I've been here for 13 years. Like I'll
Yeah.
call it on myself sometimes. I'm like, this is how we do it.
Yeah.
In that moment, I was like, oh, I don't know how we're gonna do this. But
Mm.
after those 4 days, and we rebuilt it, and it started running, and kids started showing up, and we started like seeing things in there. I was like, I don't think there's a single thing that we can't do anymore.
Wow.
Taking that off my brain because to build a school in 4 days is impossible. I've seen it. And so
Dang.
now when we're in these spots of like, okay, now we're going to be in distance learning for who knows how long, right? Like
Right.
we're still in that right now. And it's the summertime. It's like, okay, so what do we actually want?
Mm.
And these things can be crazy. Well, we want them to do a whole family meeting. Oh, that's crazy. How are you going to get 600 people on a phone call?
That's true.
We got 550 people on a phone call on Monday. Like we held a family
Wow.
meeting, right? Like
Wow.
we figure those things out. It's a lot of that like mindset. There's a book that came out a few years ago called Beautiful Constraint.
Hmm.
And Dr. Waters, who was our CEO, I think when you were there,
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
there before this, and they talked about like the beauty of a constraint. And they had
Wow.
this idea that was like, you have to keep in your brain the can if scenario. We
Mm.
can do this if this other thing happens. Like, yeah, you want that to happen? That can happen if this thing happens. So like we can have a family meeting
Yeah.
if we have somebody who's in control of the chat and
Mm.
we can control the microphones, because sometimes kids just, when
Yep.
they're figuring out technology, they're going to make choices
Of
that,
course.
whatever it is, like we can do that if we have that.
Yeah.
And we can do that if people can see each other's faces because they want to build connection. We can do
Mm.
this if we can make sure they get the link in advance and we
Yeah.
survey to figure out if everybody has a computer. Like
Right.
things that seem hard, if you keep that in brain, like I can if, like everything's like a yes and, you
Mm.
can get through
Wow.
a lot of things that would have seemed impossible before. So like
Wow.
right now our school is very different than it was however many years ago because we're virtual, but I actually like it a lot. Like it's really interesting.
Interesting.
We're still able, like we had a virtual freshman orientation. Like we didn't have a retreat.
Dang.
We didn't
I
have a
know.
retreat.
Oh,
It
that's
had to be virtual,
crazy.
but it was really cool.
Okay.
And like just because it's different doesn't mean it's bad.
Right, right, right.
Like we're growing in a lot of ways. We're
Yeah,
stretching, we're working a lot of muscles that maybe
yeah.
we hadn't had to use in a while.
That's true.
Um, and it's cool. We have a lot of new people that are on our team that like have really interesting ideas
That's
and
good.
can try different things. Or we're willing to take like risks.
Yeah, yeah.
Risky, like I'm gonna do a digital Bitmoji classroom and I'm gonna sign on to, right?
It's
Like this
true.
is like that could be risky because teenagers can be like, blue, like
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
child. But you know, it works. They like it. They like there's a picture of a dog on here. Sometimes like school is definitely different now and it'll be even different when we come back, right? Like
Definitely, yeah.
however those phases of it is. But like I've seen every phase of our school pretty much.
That's true.
And like I don't think there's anything that's impossible anymore.
Dang.
Right. So we can change, like this is probably this is like version 3.0 or 4.0, whatever it is. But like it'll be completely different next year and it'll be
That's
completely
true.
different 5 years from now. But at the
Yeah,
core, it's still like we're here to serve our kids. We
right.
want them to be successful. We want them to reach their goals, whatever those things
Yeah,
are. As long as we keep doing those things, like
yeah,
it's still up, yes, no matter what buildings or staff or people are
that's
there
true.
or online in person. Like I think that's really big in that piece of just,
hmm
you know, remember, like you said, what's at your core. There's a core
Yeah,
to our school too.
that's true. And I think that's why the school has been so, gradually just improved every single year and has found the success it is because one thing I'll always remember is just the core values of the school, right? And this mantra or this vision that the school has, and I've definitely carried that at the heart of my educational journey and just me as a person. But I think when an entity or a project or this thing just starts off with core fundamentals, very strong values, and has a very forward progressive direction of making lives better, whatever entity this is, and you keep working toward that, you're going to see growth. And I just love how, yeah, there's just so many things I love of hearing the work that the school is doing now, and just the degree of reach that LPS has made. And going from, like you said, just even if it's only 100 more students in a class, like that's still 100 more lives that are getting the LPS experience. And that's
Yeah.
something that I can really attest to and just really appreciate. And thinking back, and that's 100 more students that could turn out just like me, or probably better. And so when we talk about this over decade long span of the school, there's just so many things to appreciate. And it comes down to the can ifs. And I love how you said that. Definitely check out the book. And it's this idea of I can do this if I have that. And keeping that pathway, or keeping that moment, or keeping that idea of I can do this as long as I have this in place, and working toward that if part,
Mhm.
and just focusing on that if part. If I can accomplish or obtain that if, then my can is possible. And
Yeah.
that's just such a beautiful place to be in, because it's very it's a very positive space to be in. And it is like, it's not always going to turn out the way that we intend it to be, and that's just a very realistic way. But keeping the can if in our pocket, and keeping that idea of it's possible as long as we work on the factors around whatever we want. And so
Yeah.
another nugget to keep in my pocket, whoever's listening, can ifs, that's a good one. But if there's anything that wraps up the span of LPS, it's they can do that because they were able to focus on the other things every
Mhm.
single year.
Yeah.
And I love how it's in a space now where you don't have to worry about survival, or you have to worry about basic accreditation, or whatever
Yeah.
was working through the start of the school. You're in a wonderful place now where you can focus on the bigger picture, where you're able to think past the survival mode, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
essentially, now that I'm thinking, that's where a lot of us are in our time right now, where we're focusing on the survival.
Yeah.
But I think back to when we get out of this pandemic, when we get out of this idea of, you know, racial injustice, when we come to a place of we can do this if we all come together. We
Yeah.
can do this if we all continue the conversations that we need to have. And eventually, you know, not saying it's going to happen overnight, but by having these continued conversations and these continued effort, we can get there. And I think that's something that we can all believe in or just hold on to right now is, you know, we're in a very low spot as a country. We're in a low spot individually, in our households or whatever the case is. But you know, what are you working to make that better in the long run? And holding on to that idea that it will get better, but we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Just like the school, we're going to find a place where we'll be 10 years down the line and we can focus on the bigger picture, you know, but right now it's about the survival. It's about focusing on building a good foundation. It's focusing on building the good habits, and building the right mindset. And then from there, things will come into fruition. And so I just love that analogy of taking the roots of the school and applying that to my life, or just, you know, whoever's listening, applying it to your own life. You know,
Yeah.
it's a progression, it's a journey, can ifs. So that's good.
I think the other thing that's changed that I just thought about as we were talking is like
Yeah.
now we have like alumni staff.
That's true.
We
Yeah.
have a bunch. We have like
That's
8
crazy.
staff
Crazy.
that were graduated from our school, and like if that's not the biggest like most beautiful full circle
That's
you
true.
can think of,
I love it.
like I secretly in the back of my brain, like I hope to eventually just hand over the entire school to alumni. Like wouldn't that
Dang.
be cool if the entire school was run by alumni?
Yeah.
That would be incredible. Like I have an alumni from the first graduating class who's on my counseling team. So like I'm slowly but surely like pulling them in directions. Like one of
Mm-hmm.
our first alumni staff that came to work at our school, Kelly Palma, like she's working
Yeah.
on coaching now. Like she's coaching other teachers. Like
Crazy.
these little things, like that's the biggest
Ah,
like result that kind of proves like, yeah,
true.
what we're doing is working.
Yeah.
Like because they want to come back and serve their community. They want to
That's
be
true.
here. They
Yeah.
believe in what's happening, but also like they're pushing us in different directions because they sat in those chairs.
Yeah.
They're like, you can't do it like that anymore because it doesn't make sense. Like when I sat here, it wasn't good for me. This is what I actually needed. And I'm like,
Mm,
that's really important vision to
there you
hear too.
go.
Like lifting up the student voices. So that's been a huge blessing to be able to have all of the alumni who are at our school that are pushing us in those directions and making us have the hard conversations and really growing.
True.
Like I, you know, I love that we have so many staff at our school that are our
Yeah.
students, as we get to have these adult conversations. We get to like be at that level. We get to see them grow. But
Yeah.
then I know that they're like helping the next generation, the next group of our
Right.
alumni out into the world. And that's cool too. Like they're good to have similar experiences that I have. We're catching up with someone else down the road, right? Like
Dang.
it's cool. Their school is just really awesome in that way. I really love that they're here.
Definitely. So speaking about alumni, I'm gonna get into that a little bit. You know, shout out to my class. We're gonna take a portion to shout us out. So, you know, what specifically did you enjoy about my class in particular?
Oh, man, I thought about it today because I was like, okay, we have 2 alumni staff from your class,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Jen Tran and
Yep.
Francisco Chavez.
Yep.
Right. We have some from 2012. We have some for
Yeah.
2014, but we have those
True.
2 in there.
Yep.
Your class was jokesters. You guys were funny, but like it was never like out of line. But it was
Okay.
you guys were just like really like jovial. Like you want to
Yeah.
connect. You want to connect as people.
Mm,
You wanted to like have fun. Like
yeah.
Jen's that same way. Like she still can't call me Heather. She's been working at school for like I don't know 2 years now, 3
I
years
don't
now.
even
Like
know if I can call you that. That feels
no,
weird.
I don't. I understand. It's a thing. I get it. But it's one of those things. Like your class was like there was a lot of heart.
Mm,
There's a lot of heart, and there was a lot of like beast mode strong students in that
yeah,
class.
that's
Like
true.
you guys did not come to play.
Yeah.
So it was one of those like work hard, play hard situations.
Yeah.
But it was like also like okay, so you and Jen graduated, and
Yeah.
you both went to UC Davis.
Yeah.
And like you were the people that were the most excited to find out like who's coming to Davis after when you went. Like you and Jen would email me and like
Yeah.
who's coming from LPS to Davis. I want to meet them. Like I want to go to them. Like
True.
let me like that's who you were. You guys were like friendly. You guys wanted to like bring everybody together and like come together as people. And so I
Mm,
loved that about you guys.
yeah.
Like it was great, like chatting it up with you about superheroes or talking to Jen about basketball when I didn't know anything about
Crazy.
basketball at that point. Chavez, who was always trying to help teach somebody, like
That's
he
true.
ne-
Yeah,
he never left.
he did.
You realize
Yeah,
that
that's
he never
true.
left.
That's
He
true.
graduated and started tutoring, and then finished his
Wow.
undergrad, and then got a teaching job. But like he never left.
Wow.
So it was like one of those people that like they're really dedicated to helping people.
That's
They
true.
really like connecting with people, but they're also like just really strong students. They know how to do
Mhm.
both. So when I think of 2013, that's what I think about. You also guys had like a good set of advisors for your graduating class. Like
True.
there
Very
was some
true.
good ones. Who was your advisor?
Miss Goody.
Miss Goody was good. She went off to be a counselor too. So
Wow. Another
so
catch up
you guys had a
episode.
good set of advisors, and that really helped. Like it pushed you all in some really strong directions.
Yeah.
So I love class 2013. It was like, oh, great.
And I was speaking to other alumni and just from my class, and I mentioned this, and there's an undying loyalty to the class, and but just like the idea of all alumni, we all started off at a certain point in the development of the school, and we've really come to see it, whether by working there or just through social media, of just the span and the growth and the reach that the school has made. And a lot of us, I won't speak for everyone, but especially for myself, a lot of my success, a lot of my attributes, a lot of my accomplishments, I give up to the school. And it's because you believed in who I was. You gave me the opportunities that you felt like I deserved, even though I felt like I didn't deserve it. And just coming from this place of just literally believing it in myself and giving me the space to do that. And I think a lot of other students, a lot of other alumni, and even current students, I'm sure, can attest of the culture that LPS has provided, and essentially keeping that culture as a part of who we are, moving to college, moving into different states, moving into different occupations. And this mantra of leaders that leaders emulate, and just being inspired in a way that is where we thought it was funny, or we thought it was just a gimmick in high school, but honestly, I believed in it, and a lot of people believed in it, and it's something that we believe in it now, and it's something that is a part of who we are. That just becomes to show an example of how great the school it was and is, and it's growing to be a part of, and it's just a part of who we are now. And I'll never forget the memories that we've shared, but just how the school has made us into the people that we are today. And that's something I enjoyed about my class, because I can still see how we're being leaders in our own community, how we're being people that want to emulate what we're doing. And it's so weird to say that people look up to us, or they remember us, and we're part of different classes now, and just other alumni that appreciate our year. That's shout out to the class of 2013. It's been quite the journey of just we've all been part of our different paths, but I know that we're killing it out there. We're really doing good out there. So shout out to the teachers that are Jen, shout out to Francisco. Even I know Matt is working at the school as as an advisor. Is he? Matt
Elgin?
Matthew Elgin.
Yeah,
So
he was, but I think he
he
went back
was.
to school. Like he
Yeah,
finished up with Chabot, and so he went to do something else. So, but he
there
was
you
there for a
go.
while too, right?
Right.
Ton of alumni.
But just a ton of from our class. So shout out to everyone doing the work, and whether you're part of the school or not, whatever you're doing, shout out to you.
You've had an impact. You've come through our doors. You've had an impact.
Ms. Decker, to wrap up this idea of the wonderful things that the school has done, wonderful things that I've come to appreciate, wonderful things that I've come to appreciate about your journey, of things that I would have never known, especially coming to a place of being a young adult now, thinking about my high school days. If you could recreate a very, very short graduation speech for my class, for just any previous alumni, what would you say and why?
Man. Okay. I think my big thing is follow your heart.
Hmm,
Don't follow the money.
that's good.
Like, do what you love, and the rest will figure itself out.
There you go.
Take risks because it's worth it.
Yeah,
Um, and take care of each other.
it's
I
good.
think that's the biggest thing. Look out for
Yeah,
each other. Stay connected.
that's true.
Stay connected. There's no excuse not to. So
Yeah,
take care of each other when you need that. And know you can always come home to LPS. You can
that's
always
true.
call us. We'll always be here. I
That's
think
true.
that's the biggest thing that I would say to your class and to any students. Follow
Yeah,
your heart. take risks, take care of each other, and you can always come home. We'll always be here for you.
Full circle. I feel like I'm back in high school, sitting at, the graduation stands. It's it's really nice to just see how far we've all come, and you know, for the better or the worse, right? It wasn't an easy journey to get where we are now, and a lot of people can say that they've gone through so much stuff, so much trials and tribulations, but at the same time too, there were a lot of good things that we can appreciate from our high school days or just from our college days. And there are a lot of people that are rooting for us. There's a lot of people supporting us, whether we make it known or not, whether we make it public or not. It's in our hearts, it's in our minds, and it was shown by the people that we were at the time. Right, when we were in high school, we had friends in the moments, we had supporters in the moments, we had staff, teachers that were really rooting us on. And for them to be that in this time that we were, like, that already speaks a lot. And for a lot of us in the different spaces that we are now, we still believe in the same thing. And so, like you said, stay connected, reach out. Like, having this moment to just catch up with you, Mrs. Decker, has truly been a blessing. And honestly, it was one long overdue, but at the same time, everything happens in its own timing. And this couldn't have come better in the times that we're living in now, where we need that reminder of following our dreams, following our passions, staying true to who we are, knowing the can ifs, and reminding ourselves of the family and the community that we grew and we contributed to, and not just in LPS, but all the different spaces that we were a part of: middle school, college, those organizations, extracurricular activities, the families that you've made over time. Now more than ever is a time to reach out. Now is more than ever is a time to support one another, and reflect on who we are as people and our identities, and continue to be better for each other. So, Mrs. Decker, thank you so much for taking the time to just spill some knowledge, shed some light on your journey as an advisor, school counselor, and just to know that you are doing well and you will continue to do well. I'm always rooting for you. It's so weird to say that now, just being a younger adult now. You would always root me on, but now I get to root you on, as a fellow person in the educational system. It's good to know that you're in a place where you're essentially mentoring people that were once yourself. But I know that you'll do good, and I know that you'll continue to do good, because that's always what you've been doing. So thank you for
Thank
taking the time.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Kestner. I appreciate that. This has been so enjoyable. Anytime, you call me
hmm
anytime, Kestner. You know how to get a hold of me. Well, I would
definitely.
look forward to speaking more again soon.
Mrs. Decker, thank you so much. Until the next time, I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.